Hi, everyone, and happy Tuesday. I hope everyone is having a good week. I am happy to have Florida State University on today as part of another night of our College Spotlight Summer Series, which is almost coming to an end, which is kind of crazy. Samantha Buxman, I probably pronounced that incorrectly, Buxbaum, that's probably better.
That's great, yeah.
Buxbaum is a Florida State alumni and admissions counselor, so she can talk about the counseling perspective as well as the student life. And so for anyone who can't get to Tallahassee, hasn't been already, she can paint the picture of what it's like in the state capital of Florida. And as always, we will have questions that we will answer, or she will answer at the end, so definitely send them our way, and so we can educate you as best as possible. So I will now turn things over to Samantha. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jenna. Again, my name is Samantha Buxbaum. I'm a freshman admission counselor with FSU. So I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen and get ready to just share a little presentation about FSU and our admissions process with you all. We'll talk a little bit about financial aid, housing as well, kind of all that good stuff that a first-year applicant would need to know. All right. So getting started, here are just some quick facts about FSU. We are a large public university located in Tallahassee, Florida. We are currently have about 42,000 students overall, with the large majority of those being undergraduate students. But despite those large numbers, we do try to keep class sizes relatively small. We have a 21-to-1 student to faculty ratio. So you are really getting those smaller class sizes to get to know your professors and to get to know your fellow peers a little bit better. We're currently ranked number 18 top public university in the U.S. by U.S. News and World Report. So that's something we're always kind of happy to humbly brag on. We have a 93% retention rate from freshmen on freshman year on. So obviously, we're doing something a little bit right if our students are wanting to stick around and continue their education at FSU. And we currently have the #1 4-year graduation rate in the state of Florida. So getting started on our application process, I'm assuming a lot of you are probably juniors and seniors just getting ready to apply to some different schools. One thing about FSU is that there's multiple ways to apply. We're a part of both the Coalition and the Common Application. We also have our application on our admissions website as well. So there's really a lot of opportunities to apply to FSU. You can pick whichever application that you prefer. The only thing that we do ask is that you stick to one application and stick to that one method throughout the process. Another thing that we're switching up a little bit this year as well is if you're also interested in applying to our honors program, there are a lot of great benefits to applying to honors, smaller class sizes, priority class registration, and of course that distinction of graduating with honors from FSU. The way you apply to honors this year is a little bit different. It's actually just a supplemental application that will be added on to your general application of Florida State. So if you're interested in applying to honors, you'll literally just check the box. You'll check the box there on the general application saying that you are interested in applying to honors, and it will populate that supplemental application for you. In addition, if you're thinking about applying to one of what we call our special programs, so that's music, theater, dance, film, or visual art, those majors have specific application requirements as well, whether it's an audition or an interview or a portfolio that they need you to submit. So if you are thinking about applying to one of those majors, just make sure you're keeping up with their separate department dates and deadlines, because they will have their own separate requirements as well, in addition to the general application. But getting started, when you are applying to FSU, after you've submitted your general application of Florida State, you are going to create what's called the SSAR. So this is a separate website from FSU. And what you do is you'll get an electronic copy of your high school transcript from your guidance counselor. And then when you come home and you create this SSAR, you're actually going to manually input all of your grades into this account. So it's somewhat of like an electronic version of your high school transcript that is created by you. And we use this SSAR for a variety of reasons. One, so you don't have to worry about sending official transcripts to us up front. We want to save you a little bit of time and money that way. And also, we use the SSAR to calculate your GPA. And I'll explain how we calculate our GPA on our own scale for you a little bit later. But this is just kind of step 2 of the application process. In addition to that, once you've completed your SSAR, you're going to get a 32-character ID number once you've completed it. That's what we need from you. And you'll paste that into something that's called your application status check. Now, this is through our admissions website, and it really is going to be like your home base throughout the application process. So once you've submitted your initial application to FSU, you'll get an email from us that will instruct you to create this application status check. Every student needs to complete one. And like I said, it really is going to be your online checklist. We will have big green check marks next to things that you've turned in, red X's next to things we still need you to submit. So we want to make it as easy as possible for you to stay up to date with everything that we need from you for the application. In addition to those grades, we will need to see at least one ACT or SAT score. At this time, that is still required. We know that some students may have had some difficulties with getting access to taking ACT or SAT scores this year due to the coronavirus. Unfortunately, the going test optional is not up to us. That's determined by the Florida Board of Governors. So until we hear an answer from them, whether we can become test optional or not, at this time we are still requiring at least one ACT or SAT score. So you can self-report that. That's another thing you can self-report right onto your application status check. Again, you don't have to worry about sending us official test scores up front. We will, of course, ask for official documents later on, like your final official transcript, your official test scores, once you've been admitted, just so we can verify all that information is correct and good to go. But up front, we do want you to just save a little bit of time and money, and you can self-report that information. You also have the option to upload a personal essay and resume. We use a holistic review at FSU when we're reviewing your application. And so in order for us to holistically review you, we need to look at some things beyond just your grades and your test scores. So this really is your chance to, to show us who you are, for us to get to know who you are as a student beyond your grades and beyond your test scores. So that's why I definitely highly encourage students to complete that optional essay and resume as well. Eventually, we will need you to complete a residency declaration form. Doesn't matter if you're in state or out of state. We just need you to complete that for tuition purposes. Now that you know everything you need to submit for the application, you might be wondering, when is all this stuff due? And we do have a pretty simple breakdown. We have a priority deadline of December 1st for our application and all those supporting materials. And so any student that applies by our December 1st deadline will find out their admission decision on February 18th. Now, students can apply to FSU on a rolling basis after December 1st, but they will receive their admission decision also on a rolling basis starting after February 18th. The reason why we do prioritize our priority deadline is really because students do get priority to a variety of things. You have priority admission consideration, priority scholarship consideration. You're also the only students that would be eligible to apply for that honors program and the first in line to apply for on-campus housing if that's what you're interested in as well. So as you can see, there's a lot of benefits to applying by our December 1st date. So I definitely recommend, if you're a senior now, make sure you're getting everything in by then. All right, so going on to that review process, like I mentioned before, it is a holistic review. We are not just, there's no single criteria that we're looking at for a student to be admitted into Florida State. Obviously, academics play a big role in your review process, but it's not just your GPA, not just your grades. we're looking at the rigor of your curriculum. So what types of classes have you been taking throughout your high school career? And we even take a look at the types of classes you're taking senior year, right? Because we have your SSAR, we're going to have your grades from your first 3 years, but we'll also have your senior schedule. We won't necessarily have your grades from senior year yet, because by December 1st, no one will probably have those. But that's okay. We're just going to look at your senior year schedule to see if you are just keeping up that momentum and challenging yourself in your senior year as well. And of course, we also take those test scores into consideration when we're reviewing your application. Essay and resume, like I mentioned before, this really is a chance to show off more of a personal side of your application. So on that resume, you can include a variety of things, whether that's community service, jobs and internships, special recognition, any sort of relevant coursework, any sort of involvement you've had outside the classroom. We would love to know about it. And you do have a variety of essay topics to choose from depending on which application you choose. They might differ a little bit. So if you go through Common App, they might have a few extra essay topics just because Common App also does provide some essay topics of their own for you to choose from. But ultimately, students can actually come up with their own essay topic as well if that's what you choose. So the options are really limitless there. And then a few other things we're able to look at when we're reviewing your application: landscape data. So this is a tool that is provided by College Board that we use. Basically, it just provides a little bit of important information about your school. So what types of classes are being offered at your school? We take that into consideration as well. And then life challenges. We also give students the ability to relay that information if they feel that it's necessary to share that with us in the application. So whether it's economic hardship, medical conditions, if you feel that is necessary, by all means, please let us know that in the essay. We also have a box in the application where you can add additional information, and students can certainly talk about that as well in their application. So once we've reviewed students and gone through that holistic review, obviously it is now decision time. And there are actually 4 different ways a student can be admitted to the university. So when you're applying to FSU, we actually have 2 different ways you can apply. You can either apply for a fall start at Florida State or a summer start at FSU. And then we have a few other options that we sometimes give to students as well, as you can see listed out here on the right. And I'll quickly go over those different types of acceptances. So a fall or summer acceptance is simply getting admitted for the term that you applied for. And as you can see here, these are actually the middle 50% ranges of students that we admitted for this year's freshman class. I do want to break down these numbers for you though. So the GPAs that you're seeing here, those are based on the FSU recalculated scale that I had mentioned before. So when you enter those courses into your SSAR, it does calculate that GPA for us. And when you enter your coursework into the SSAR, you do have the option to label your classes accordingly. So if they're honors level courses, you'll mark it as honors, dual enrollment, AP, IB, whatever type of level it is, college prep. Please label it correctly because that's how we calculate that GPA. So we're looking at the grades from the letter grades from your core classes. So your English, math, natural science, social science, world language, and we put those together to create that GPA. And then we go back in and we add additional weight to some of those classes. So if you've taken any pre-AP or honors or pre-IB level classes, we actually weight those an additional half point. So those are weighted on a 4.5 scale. And then AP, IB, ACE, dual enrollment, those are actually weighted a full point higher. So those are weighted on a 5.0 scale. So that's why you see these GPAs going above and beyond that typical 4.0 range. As far as ACT and SAT go, we actually do super score both of those exams. So what that means is if you are taking those tests multiple times and you submit multiple test scores to us, we're going to take the highest subsections from each of those exams and we will put those together to create an overall super score for you. Now, sometimes when students apply for fall, but they're maybe meeting more of the academic ranges of a summer start, that is where we'll sometimes give them a summer offer. So that is one of the offers that we give through the Office of Admissions. When a student is given a summer offer, they'll have a little bit of time to accept that offer. Once you accept the offer, it does not bind you to FSU in any way. It's just simply an agreement saying that I am willing to come for the summer term if I decide to attend FSU. You'll still have until that May 1st college decision date to make your final decision and officially commit to Florida State. The way our summer term works, it's a 6-week term after you graduate from high school. So it usually starts at the end of June, goes to the first weekend in August. And you're only taking about 2 or 3 classes during that time, just kind of getting a foot on campus. And then you get a 3-week break and you come back and start that fall semester. So it's not a trial term. It's not a probationary term in any way. You're simply just starting your FSU career a little bit earlier. Now, for students that apply for either a fall or summer start, but maybe aren't meeting those academic ranges, we have a couple other ways that students can be admitted into the university as well. And one of them is through our Seminole Pathways program. And so as you can see here, these are the typical academic ranges that we admitted for this year's class for Seminole Pathways. If a student is given a Seminole Pathways offer, they actually have 4 different options to choose from when they're admitted through that program. And the first one is our transfer pathway. And so if a student chooses to do the transfer pathway option, essentially they would start at any accredited college or university of their choice the fall of their freshman year, take 15 credit hours. Within that 15 credit hours, you do need to take an English and a math that are on track towards your intended major. And then you also need to maintain at least a 3.0 GPA that first semester there. Once you've completed that and you've met those admission requirements, then you will transfer to FSU in the spring of your freshman year. So it's just that one semester at a different institution of your choice. The reason why we put Tallahassee Community College on this slide, TCC, is one, because it's right in town with FSU. It's right up the road from us. So a lot of students will choose this option because they like to get acclimated in Tallahassee before transferring over to FSU. But also, students who attend TCC actually have priority class registration at TCC over their other students that are starting out their career there. So as a Seminole Pathway student, you do have priority class registration for that first fall semester. So that's a little bit of a perk with going to TCC. Our second pathway is one of our 2 abroad pathways. So this is the first semester abroad. FSU has a robust study abroad program. If that is something that you've ever been interested in, FSU really is a great place to go. We actually have 4 main study centers located across the globe. So they're actual little FSU campuses located in London, England, Florence, Italy, Valencia, Spain, and Panama City in the Republic of Panama. So if you decide to do the first semester abroad, it would be your fall semester abroad of your freshman year. And then you would come back to Tallahassee and start your spring semester off back here. Our other international pathway that students can choose from is our first year abroad. So this is a full year abroad, a fall, spring, and summer. Sometimes students will choose this option for a variety of reasons. One, they just really like studying abroad and want to spend as much time abroad as possible. And actually with this option, we do give you the option to attend multiple of those campuses. So you could do like 2 semesters in London and then do your summer semester in Florence. You have a few options with that. I always like to talk to our out-of-state students about a first year abroad with FSU, because whether you complete it through the Seminole Pathways program, or even if you're just admitted for fall or summer at FSU and you really wanted to do a first year abroad, as an out-of-state student, if you complete a first year abroad with FSU, you are eligible to receive in-state tuition once you return from that first year abroad for the remainder of your undergraduate career at FSU, as long as you've earned at least a 3.0 GPA that year that you are abroad. So that definitely is a A highlight, if studying abroad is something that you've been interested in as an out-of-state student, that is definitely a perk to look forward to. And then finally, our fourth pathway is our Panama City option. So this is when students would choose to attend our Panama City, Florida campus their entire freshman year, and then you would transfer over to the main campus in Tallahassee starting your sophomore year. So those are our 4 Seminole Pathway programs. And then finally, one other offer that we sometimes will give to students is a spring offer. And so essentially this is pretty much the same as that transfer pathway option, where you would start at any accredited college or university of your choice, take those 15 semester hours, and then you would transfer to FSU in the spring. These students are sitting academically a little bit below our Seminole Pathways students. So that is why this is their only option in terms of starting at FSU. They don't have the 4 options to choose from. They just really have this transfer option. And so, like I said, these are the 4 different ways that a student can be possibly admitted into Florida State. And again, these numbers are subject to change year to year. These were the numbers that we admitted for this past year's class. They could go up, they could go down. It really is just depending on the competitive nature of the class and who is applying that year. One helpful resource that I like to mention is our academic program guide. So if you're taking some maybe higher level courses like AP, IB, even dual enrollment classes, and you're wanting to kind of get a head start and see what you can already satisfy, it's helpful to look at this website. One, because we have an A to Z list of majors. So if you're really just interested in learning about our different major programs at FSU, this is a good resource to go to. But if you click on your individual major, you'll find program descriptions and academic maps. So it'll show you the classes that you need to satisfy for graduation. So again, if you are taking some of those dual enrollment classes, it would be beneficial for you to take classes that are on track towards your intended major, especially if you are taking quite a few dual enrollment classes. And we'll just transition a little bit now into some financial information. Here are the estimated costs of attendance for both an in-state and an out-of-state student at FSU. On the top there, you can see the estimated cost of the estimated tuition and fees. This is for a full year at FSU, so it's based on taking about 15 credit hours a semester for both a fall and a spring. Tuition is based on the number of credit hours you're taking each semester. And then in the middle, we've included some other rough estimates for things like housing, meal plans, books and supplies. So again, these are just overall estimated costs of attendance for a year at FSU. On the right there, we mentioned the FAFSA. If you are hoping to receive need-based aid from the university, you will need to fill out a FAFSA. It opens every year on October 1st. It is a first come, first serve basis, so the sooner you fill out a FAFSA, the better. Filling out a FAFSA is not required to receive financial aid at FSU, but if you're hoping to receive need-based aid through FAFSA, then obviously you will want to fill one of those out as soon as possible. Another thing, we also offer our merit-based scholarships. So I especially want to highlight the 2 on the top. They are the 2 merit scholarships we offer through the Office of Admissions. What's especially great about these 2 is there's no separate application for them because they're merit-based. We're just looking at your criteria when you apply to the university, so you don't have to apply for them. Our University Freshman Scholarship is reserved for our in-state students. So it's a $9,600 scholarship that's divided over the course of 4 years. It's about $1,200 a semester for 8 semesters. And then our out-of-state tuition reduction scholarship is obviously for our out-of-state students. So you might have noticed on the last slide, there's about a $14,000 difference between in-state and out-of-state tuition. That out-of-state tuition reduction scholarship is a little over $14,000 a year, so it is bringing you down to about that in-state level after that. This past year, we looked at students' GPA, test scores, and made sure they earned all A's and B's throughout high school in order for them to be eligible for that scholarship. The subject or the criteria for how we review for scholarships is subject to change each year, especially just given the nature of how test scores are going to work this year. We don't know. That is subject to change. Other scholarships that are offered, one is through the honors program. So again, if you are applying for honors and you're admitted into that program, one scholarship that they offer is called the Presidential Scholars Program. That funding is also $9,600, and you can be an in-state student, you can be an out-of-state student to receive it. They also provide a stipend on top of that for students to use either to participate in a research program or a study abroad program. So it is really, it's a huge deal. It's definitely something worth applying for. It is a prestigious scholarship. And finally, one other resource I'll mention is the Florida Department of Education website. They're another great resource for scholarships if you are looking to apply to schools within the state of Florida. One scholarship that they offer is the Benequisto Scholarship, and that is given to national merit finalists that select Florida State as their #1 school. And finally, we made it to life as a Knoll. Quickly, I'll talk about housing contracts. The way that we do housing contracts at FSU is those actually don't become available until a student is officially admitted into Florida State. So this year, because we're releasing admission decisions in mid-February, you could probably expect to start seeing information about housing contracts late February, early March for you to sign up. Housing is limited, it's not guaranteed, it is a first come, first serve. So I definitely recommend if FSU, by that time next year is in your top 2 or 3 list of schools that you are seriously considering, I would say go ahead and fill out one of those housing contracts. The reason is because they do ask for a prepayment up front, but if you decide to cancel and attend a different institution, you would receive all but $50 of that deposit back. We also have a lot of great dining options on campus. This picture that you see here is in Swanee Dining Hall. That is our main dining hall on campus. And we have lots of other great dining locations around the school as well. We have a lot of different ways students can get plugged in on campus with over 700 registered student organizations. And we also have great ways for students to get active. We have a really large intramural and club team, club sport team kind of circle at FSU. We have 2 gyms on campus, and we actually own the FSU Reservation, which is an area right off campus, about a couple miles up the road. It's a beautiful lakefront property where students can go out there and they can paddleboard, they can sunbathe, they can canoe, they can kayak, all for free, and that's open to students weekly. So that's a great way to just get out and enjoy the outdoors, because that is important to us too. We want our students to not only be involved in their community, involved in FSU, but get involved outside and in the community as well. And here are just some quick important dates. You all are more than welcome to take a screenshot of this or take a picture with your phone, because these are just some helpful dates that we've already covered about the application process to FSU. And finally, we made it to the end. Here's just some quick information on how to stay connected with us. Admissions at fsu.edu is a great way to reach us, at least for right now, because we are working remotely. Phone calling FSU is a little bit limited at this point, so the best point of contact right now is through email, and you can attend all of our virtual events that we have. We have sessions, we do virtual campus tours. You can meet one-on-one with an admission counselor or even with a student ambassador. So I definitely encourage you to take advantage of some of our virtual opportunities we have during this time as well. And of course, stay connected with us through our social media sites too. We're always posting on there and have a lot of fun interactive things for students to get plugged in on. But thanks, Jenna. I was just about to tell you to come back on, and I guess we'll transition to our next part.
Yeah, thank you. That was super thorough. So I know that you were a student there. Are you from Florida?
Originally, yes, but then my family moved out of state while I was in high school, so I sort of got that out of state experience while also kind of being familiar with Florida as well.
Great. And so somebody asked about the social life on campus. So if you want to talk about kind of your experience, I don't know how long ago you went, but
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, FSU is a very engaged community, very social community. I think that really is part of the FSU culture. Our students are very academically involved and want to get involved that way, but they also want to get involved outside of the classroom as well, whether that's through Greek life. We have a pretty robust Greek life system at FSU, or one of our many other registered student organizations. If Greek life is not your thing, it's definitely not something you have to do if you come to Florida State. We have, like I mentioned before, we have sports and intramural club teams. We have really something for everyone. One website I will mention is called Knoll Central. So that's Nole Central. If you just Google that, it takes you to our registered student organization page, and you can browse the list of over 700 student organizations. But that is what I really recommend doing. You're gonna probably meet some friends in the classroom, but where you're really gonna find your community on FSU's campus is by getting involved outside of the classroom too. So definitely get plugged in right away and enjoy your time on campus. There's lots of things to do.
now what do people tend to do off campus? Like what's Tallahassee like for someone who, has never been there? Are there weekend trips away from, I know it's not like anywhere near Miami. I'm actually looking up because I have a map of all the
Yeah.
United States right now. I'm looking at where Tallahassee is, right? So it's not near Miami, it's not near Disney necessarily, but do people like, where do they go on the weekends and within Tallahassee and outside?
Yeah, so good question. So, yeah, it's kind of funny how long of a state Florida is. We're about like 8 hours away from Miami, 8 hour drive. So that's not necessarily like a day trip, but sometimes students will make the drive down there and go for the weekend. But I would say Disney actually is kind of a popular thing for students to do just because we're about 3 hours away from Disney, so it's not too far of a drive. We're actually not far away from some really great beaches as well. The Emerald Coast beaches that are right in the Panhandle are, a great day trip for students, about an hour drive, if that, to a nice beach. So a lot of students will like to get out of town, but if they're wanting to stay in Tallahassee too, there's always something going on. We're a college town because not only FSU is there, but Florida A&M University is also located in Tallahassee. So big college town, always some activity going on the weekends. There's lots of things that students can do with FSU to do on the weekends. We have what are called like outdoor pursuits. So that's through our campus recreation center where you can sign up to go on like camping trips with FSU Rec, or like backpacking trips, or if you're more like outdoorsy, there are those kinds of things. But I think there's lots of things for students to do. But if you want to get out of town, Tallahassee is actually in a great spot too, because we're not a far driving distance from a lot of different places as well.
Speaking of Florida, somebody asked a kind of funny question. Do you guys get hurricanes sometimes?
So in Tallahassee, not as much as I would say South Florida does, but we have had a few hurricanes. There were like starting in 2016 through 2019, we pretty much had a big hurricane come through Tallahassee each year. But that's kind of part of the Florida lifestyle. I would say you kind of get used to them in a really weird way. Obviously, Tallahassee, the city of Tallahassee makes sure that our city is prepared and ready to handle hurricanes, especially as we've had more and more every year the past few years. This year or last year, we actually didn't have a major hurricane come through. But because because the city knows that there are a lot of college students living in the city too that are, may not be with their families, they especially want to make sure that you are feeling as safe as possible. Florida State always puts a lot of precautions and things up to make sure that our students are as safe and as comfortable as possible if we do have a hurricane coming our way.
Great. Oh, we have a lot of questions. How hard is it for out-of-state students to get admitted? Is it more competitive than in-state students?
So there is no separate way that we review out-of-state students. So it is not harder, it is not easier for out-of-state students to be admitted to FSU.
Okay. Can you explain again about out-of-state students going to study abroad, and then when they get back to Florida State, they can pay the in-state tuition?
Yeah, so that is just called our first year abroad program. I definitely recommend, if you are interested in learning more about that, visit our international programs website. It's just international.fsu.edu. They have a great website. But what that is if you decide to do a first year abroad as an out-of-state student, you will need to complete that full year abroad. So it is a fall, spring, and a summer semester that you will be abroad. Once you return from that first year, you will receive in-state tuition for the remainder of your undergraduate career at FSU, as long as you maintained at least a 3.0 GPA that year that you were abroad.
So I had always heard that and thought that was a rumor. So
It's not a rumor. Yeah, it's a pretty sweet deal.
yeah, I was like, that's too good to be true.
I know, yeah.
What are students doing this year then for that?
So this year, they don't know exactly what the plans are going to be for the spring. Their hope is that maybe they can do something in the spring, if not for the fall, to get those students, even just to get a little bit of a taste of going abroad. Just due to the restrictions, though, that are being placed, especially because 3 out of the 4 of our abroad, like our main campus locations, are in European countries. It is a little bit harder to travel there. So they're not abroad right now. They are home with their families, as are the rest of our students. We are working primarily remotely. We are offering a few on-campus classes this fall semester, but they are still eligible. Those students were still eligible to receive that in-state tuition this year, so that was good. Or they're still eligible to receive that in-state tuition for the remainder of their undergrad, because they were wanting to go to that first year abroad, but they couldn't. But we're hopeful that it's going to start back up again next year. Even if you don't do a first year abroad program, we have about 34 different study abroad programs at FSU in about 60 different countries around the globe. Some of them are more major specific. We have like summer programs, spring break programs, so a lot of those like short-term programs if you just wanted a little bit of a taste of abroad.
Great. Can you explain more about the Seminole pathway? Does it mean if you are not selected for Florida State, you can get into it through this way? Of the 4 pathways, if a student chooses the abroad option, does he or she pay FSU tuition or pay the school abroad's tuition?
Yeah, so our Seminole Pathways program is an offer that we have to give. So it's not something that students can directly give. It is an offer of admission that is determined by our office. So if you are given that Seminole Pathways offer and you decide to do the first year or the first semester abroad, you'll still be paying tuition at FSU, because the school that you will be attending abroad is FSU. We have actual campuses abroad. So you are learning from FSU faculty, you are attending classes with other FSU students on FSU-owned campuses.
What is the average class size, including introduction classes?
So introduction classes are going to be your larger class sizes. Sometimes you can have 100 students in a class. Sometimes you can have a few hundred students in a class. Sometimes you can have 30. Actually, with our freshman English classes, so our ENC 1101, ENC 2135, which are required classes for graduation, we actually cap those at 30 students. So those will never go above that number. But if you're taking college algebra or introduction to biology for non-majors, some of those are going to be larger class sizes. But the more you get into your major, the more your class sizes are going to shrink. So sometimes, I mean, just talking from kind of more of the student perspective now, as a student, sometimes I had, 25 students in a class. A couple times I had 10 students in a class with me. So it really just depends on the class that you're taking, what your major is. That will have a difference too. If you're in the honors program, that is another benefit to being a part of that, because your class sizes are naturally capped at a smaller class size, because that is how they like to operate the honors program. So it really just depends.
So I'm sure you expected a lot of this pushback on, if we're in New Jersey where the SUT and ACT keeps getting canceled due to COVID, is there a serious discussion on behalf of the state of Florida about waiving the requirement for the cycle?
Yes. So, it is our hope. Florida, is kind of in a really similar situation where a lot of our students are having tests canceled on them as well. Our students, meaning state of Florida students. So we are kind of in that same predicament. We are just waiting on the Florida Board of Governors. Unfortunately, it's not FSU's decision. So if you're applying to FSU, if you're applying to University of Florida, if you're applying to University of South Florida, we're all in the same boat with that right now. I'm just kind of waiting on that determination. They are aware of where the majority of our students are coming from. Majority of our students are coming from the state of Florida and the Northeast. We get a lot of students applying from New York and New Jersey. Those are actually in our top 5 states that we get applications from. So they are aware of that, and they are mindful of, tests being canceled. So at this point, it's just a little bit of a waiting game, unfortunately. But as soon as we get the news, if we are eligible to become test optional, we will, of course, make our applicants aware of that and post that on our admissions website, on our social media. So just stay tuned with that.
Is the honors program offered for all majors?
Yes, yeah. So it doesn't matter what major you are in, you can participate in the honors program.
Okay. What is the percentage of out-of-state students overall?
We have about 15% out of state. About 85% of our students are coming from in the state of Florida. But again, that's not because they're reviewed any differently. That's just simply who's applying to FSU.
And how does a student from out of state typically get to Florida State? Like if you're coming from like New York or New Jersey.
Like transportation?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. A lot of our students will fly. We have a pretty small airport in Tallahassee, which I always laugh because it's called Tallahassee International Airport, but we have about like 4 gates at our Tallahassee airport. But a lot of our flights are, to main hubs like Atlanta. Actually, it's probably like Atlanta, Miami, and Charlotte, I believe, are where our flights to. So you'll probably always have a connecting flight. That was my struggle as an out-of-state student too. Sometimes students will find carpools. There are a couple like Facebook pages that students have created where they just do like an FSU carpool. It's more common for students that are like coming from in the state of Florida, but sometimes you never know. You might see like a New York one that's saying, hey, I'm planning on making the drive home if anyone needs a ride. Some students will carpool together and do that, but primarily flying.
What is the international student orientation like, and how does FSU help integrate them with the local campus community?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's lots of good resources that we have for international students, because we actually do have a lot of international students applying to FSU. Now, let me pause for a second. Are you talking about students that are going abroad, or are you talking about abroad, like international students that are coming to the United States to study?
Not sure. I think he's probably talking about, I don't know. Hopefully
I'll talk a little bit about both. So if you are an international student coming to the United States to study, we have it's called the Globe, and it is our resource for international students. So we have different like language immersion programs if that is needed for you. And it's a great place just for international students to interact with one another, because we know that it is a bit of a difficult, or not a difficult, but it can be difficult for some students to adjust to coming to college in a different country. So it's kind of a nice community that our international students can form with one another, and have lots of great campus events that are powered through the globe. So that's a great way to get plugged in as an international student. And then if you are a domestic student going abroad to one of our international campuses, we do have separate international orientations that you will attend. They're very detailed, put on by our international programs to make sure that you are well prepared before you embark on your first semester, first year abroad, or whatever type of international trip you're doing.
Great. I was taking some final questions. Someone asked for your email if they have any follow-ups.
Yeah. So my email is S as in Sally, B as in boy, UXBAUM, and I can type it out in the chat feature here at fsu.edu.
Okay, and then, what my question, I guess, like my final wrap-up question, unless someone else has a final question, would be, so many of my students want to be in Florida. Either they have grandparents in Florida or they hate the cold. And so there's lots of great institutions in Florida. I've seen like 15 of them. What do you think makes Florida State special and stand out, and maybe even why you chose it as a school?
Yeah. What stood out to me when I was looking at colleges, because I looked at a few other schools in Florida too, but what stuck out to me about Florida State really was just the feeling I got when I walked on campus of how unique of a community it is. It's a diverse community. It is a vibrant community. I think students, like I mentioned before, are really highly involved in academic activities. We have incredible research opportunities. We are a Research 1 level institution. We have, our great study abroad program. But as much as they want to get involved in academics, our students love getting involved outside of campus as well, outside of the classroom, and just really involve students, whether that's through engaging in community service, just getting them plugged in their different interests, really just engaging their different interests. You might major in one thing, but have a passion and a hobby in something completely different, and decide to join a club for it at FSU. And so that just really stuck out to me as a student, and why I really loved my experience at FSU is because I made sure that I got involved in a lot of different ways on campus and made a lot of different friends that way, lifetime friendships. So that is really what stuck out to me, and that's why I'm here as an admission counselor, because I enjoyed my experience so much with FSU, and I really do find that there is a place for everyone on our campus.
Great, thank you, and thanks for joining us tonight, and I hope that we see you in New Jersey, or as students get down to Tallahassee, and that everything gets back to normal soon.
Yes, definitely. And thank you for having us. We're excited to get our students back on campus, and excited to get visitors back on campus too, because we love interacting with you all face to face. But for now, stay tuned with our virtual events. We're trying our hardest to make it as interactive and as fun as possible virtually. So,
well, you did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And stay in touch. If anyone has any questions, feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to help.
Thank you. Have a great evening.